Now, which country has the biggest credit boom in the European Union and which is the worst? Latvia. David Tweed's latest stop on his Northern European train tour. David, how bad has it been?
Pretty tough, actually, in Latvia. Andrea, let me just tell you, I took a train. Actually, I had to take two trains because there are no direct lines from Tallinn down here to Riga in Latvia, which, of course, had the worst bust after the credit crisis and had to turn to the European Union, the only country in the Baltics that had to do that, European Union and the IMF, and they sought a 7.5 billion euro bailout after the second biggest bank there failed. Last year, the economy shrank by 18%, and they still need to keep their austerity measures in place if they're going to have any chance of meeting the criteria so that they can join the euro, which is a long-term aim, and also emulate its northern neighbour, Estonia, which joins at the beginning of this next year. What I wanted to find out while I was there, though, was exactly how people are coping with this austerity. I've just arrived in Riga, the capital of Latvia, which had the worst recession of any European Union country. And what I want to find out is how they are coping. Not so bad for some. This house in a ritzy neighbourhood by the coast dates from 2004, when Latvia joined the European Union and went on a borrowing binge. Just down the road, a sign of the crash that followed, still standing, but unfinished and abandoned. And it's not just the houses. Cars were repossessed by the thousands. Many were exported back out of the country. On this lot, it's the bank itself that's shifting the inventory. It got so bad, Latvia turned to the EU and the IMF for a bailout. Unemployment soared, and last year, the economy contracted by 18%.
There's a lot of details in what has to be done, but a lot of it makes so much sense.
Like what?
For instance, that centralizing more of activity in the public sector with the finance ministry, for instance, so that the finance ministry can know how many people are employed in the public sector. I think that makes sense. Creating a wage grid so that you're paid this much for that job instead of discretion in the individual ministries. So it means just more control over public spending.
That's hit all areas of the economy, especially education, where small schools have been closed down in favour of bigger ones and salaries have been cut.
For some teachers, it went down even for 50%, and mainly about 35%.
So has that made it very much difficult, life very much difficult, just in terms of, you know,
Yes,
living?
I believe, yes. It has become very, very difficult to earn for living for teachers. And especially if it happens so that there are two teachers in the family, then it's extremely difficult.
The crisis goes beyond education. At this outdoor soup kitchen in Riga, I spoke to an out-of-work builder.
Almost everything was stopped. Where previously you'd be paid 5 to 8 lats, now, God help us, you get 2 or 1.5 lats an hour.
How do you do? Thank you very much for coming. Tough as it's been, the Prime Minister says the country had no other choice.
There is a degree of appreciation also in the society that even though we had to make those tough austerity measures, it has paid off and we are now on the track of recovery. So far I also had not heard any credible alternative proposals.
Dombrovskis faces an election in October when the people will decide if they want the government's programme to stay on track.
Well, David joins me now. David, very interesting there hearing you talk to the Prime Minister. They do have elections coming up in October, so he's got the country on these austerity measures. Is there a chance that he could lose that election and the austerity measures along with it?
Well, that's a question, actually, that I posed to the Prime Minister. Just listen to what he said about it.
What is the alternative? Of course, we are working to win the election, but in any case, any next government will be confronted with the same issue. We still have quite substantial budget deficit. Well, we might try to finance it from markets, but markets will charge us substantially higher interest rates than we are getting now from IMF and European Commission's package. And quite clear that we'll have to finance at least, if not 6% of GDP. If some parties will argue that fiscal austerity is not needed, it means that it's more than 6% of GDP budget deficit.
So he's pretty clear there. There's not much choice. According to him, there's not much choice. They have to stick to austerity whether they like it or not.
Now, what's next on your trip? How are you getting on that train journey?
Well, actually, you know, the train journey itself was quite an ordeal. We had to... There are no direct lines between the capitals in the Baltic states. They've all got direct lines.
Oh,
they've got direct lines to Moscow and Petersburg.
Okay.
So in order to get around, you have to take all these local trains, which was actually fantastic because we saw a lot of countryside, but it takes a long time. The next trip we get to, the next destination is Lithuania. We get to Vilnius, where I wanted to have a look and see what the government there is doing to cope with its austerity, and they're trying to increase the returns on state-owned assets, which is going to be quite a task for the government coming up. That's the last leg of the trip too.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you very much indeed for all that. We look forward to finding out more tomorrow. Thanks, David.